Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Premamritam Manidhi Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksuran Militan Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manavistam Stavitan Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamaya Didanti Swapadantikam. First of all, I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Diksha and Shiksha Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Satarasata Sisimad, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Then I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Satarasata Sisimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha Gurus, Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhaktivigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, Srila Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I offer my most humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, unto Sri Arjuna, the listener of Bhagavad Gita, and unto Sri Bhagavad Gita, the sacred text which we are discussing here. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of all the great commentators of Sri Bhagavad Gita, the original Srila Sridhar Swami, also Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and the God brother of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. To all these great personalities who have written commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, including Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan, I offer my humble obeisances at their lotus feet, and I offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here today, my Dandavat Pranam. So, continuing with the discussion on the fourth chapter, following the narrative that is being driven by the questions which Srila Gurudev talks about in the second chapter, verse 54. He outlines the 16 questions that Arjuna asks throughout the Bhagavad Gita and that Krishna answers. So we are discussing the fourth chapter, Aparam Bhavato Janma. How am I to understand that you previously instructed the science to Vivaswan? Because Krishna begins the fourth chapter explaining how he gave this knowledge originally to Vivaswan. And Arjuna understanding that Krishna, in his present manifestation that he's seeing, is apparently junior in age and appearance to Vivaswan, who's been here for millions of years. He asks this question. And this gives Krishna the opportunity to explain his transcendental nature, which is beyond the mundane vision of the materialists. Krishna will continue to do this throughout the Gita, and we will talk about many different verses, 7th chapter, 8th chapter, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter, 12th chapter. Again and again, Krishna makes his position absolutely clear. So, right now, we have covered up to verse 13 of the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 13, which was the Chaturvanya Mayam Shrishtam. We covered the verses that Krishna uses to directly answer Arjuna's questions, Pritranaya Sadhunam, Vinashaya Chaduskritam, etc., all these verses, which establish his transcendental nature, Jamma Karma Chame Divyam. So, therefore, Krishna has answered this. Now he's going on to explain more and more about Gyan Yoga and about the power of Gyan, or transcendental knowledge, and what effect it has on the person. And so we are going to discuss those verses about Gyan. We also discussed as they surrender unto me, Ye Yatamam Prapadyante. We discussed these verses. So all of this has been discussed. Now we see in verse number 15, Krishna talks about all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding, Chaturvanyamayam Shishtam, and so attained liberation. Therefore, as the ancients, you should perform your duty in divine consciousness. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all sins. This is verse number 16. And Srila Gurudev talks about it. He says here, even men of discrimination become bewildered in their efforts to determine what is karma and what is akarma, action and inaction. I shall therefore explain karma tattva to you, knowledge or the truth about karma or action and inaction, knowing which you will become liberated from the bondage of karma. So then in the next verse, karma, vikarma, and akarma should be distinctly understood from the principle of karma, for the principle of karma is profound. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand, therefore one should know properly what is action, what is forbidden action, what is inaction. So in the Upanishads, Srila Prabhupada talks about these things in the commentary on the second verse. Karma, akarma, and vikarma are very clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the verses that we just talked about, verse number 17. Actions that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures, are called karma. Actions that free one from the cycle of birth and death are called akarma. And actions that are performed through the misuse of one's freedom, minute independence, and that direct one to the lower forms of life are called vikarma. Now here, Srila Narayan Maharaj talks about vikarma being forbidden action that leads to a miserable destination. So, whenever we misuse our minute independence and we act against the principles of Shastra, this is called vikarma, sinful activity, or activities which are against the laws of nature as prescribed by Krishna in the Vedas. Now, some people will argue with you. How can you say da 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 da? And they will have all these different arguments about what is sin and what is not sin, and it's in your own mind, and so on and so forth. But that's not a fact. Fact is that Prabhupada used to give the example that if there's an electronic, and this is a Kindle Fire, okay, there's an electronic instrument. When I got this instrument, there was a piece of literature that went with it that tells me how it works. If I follow what's in the piece of literature, then the thing works. And if I don't follow what's in the piece of literature, it'll break. That goes for the camera, the lights, the computer, whatever you have that's an electrical instrument. Whenever you get the apparatus, there is a pamphlet that describes how to keep it in proper working order by using it in a particular manner. And when you use it in a particular manner, it will be functioning properly all the time. This is intelligence, understanding how these things work, okay? So the world is also a physical apparatus. And there are laws by which we can understand how the world works. If you misuse your minute independence, if you don't follow the Vedas, the Vedic literature, which are the pamphlet that describes how the world works, if you go against that with your minute independence, then you will receive a reaction. Does God still love you? Of course. God always loves you. God loves you no matter what you do. Even when you misuse your minute independence and you act in a very dishonorable manner by exploiting other people, exploiting nature, exploiting the environment, whatever you do that is against the principles of the Vedas for exploitation for your own personal sense gratification, Krishna loves you through all of it. He has no conditions upon his love for you. His love is unconditional. God loves you. But he also gives you the minute independence. And that minute independence will be a matter of responsibility for you in terms of your actions. When you act, you have to take responsibility for your actions. If you misbehave, then you must get the reaction. And if you behave properly, then you will also get the reaction. Behaving properly means that, as Prabhupada says here, karma, akarma, vikarma, actions that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties. This is what Chaturvanya Maya Shrishtam. The Chaturvanya Maya Shrishtam, there are 4 varnas: the Brahmins, who are the priestly caste, the Kshatriyas, who are the warriors and the administrators, the Vaishyas, who are the agriculturalists, the bankers, the mercantilists, and the Sudras, who are the artisans, the craftsmen, the laborers that perform labor in society. These are the 4 varnas, okay? And every civilization is divided in this way. We see that there's the intellectuals, and the administrators, and the warriors, and the economists, and then we see that there's the labor class. Okay, so every society is divided like this. It's natural. It's a natural function of organizing society. We don't give it names like that in the West, but that's there. And then there's the 4 ashrams, which is the brahmachari or student life, and then there's the grihastha or married life, in which you develop an opportunity for your economic development and your sense pleasure in the material world, having a family, taking care of children, etc. And then there is vanaprastha, which is the retirement, when you and your wife spend time together trying to develop your spiritual consciousness through going to holy places and visiting different temples and ashrams and giving spiritual guidance as an elder in the community to the younger people. And then there's sannyas, which is considered to be like the father of society. And the purpose of the sannyasi is to study scripture and then to practice devotional practices and then to teach what he has realized and learned through his execution of his sannyas dharma. Okay, so these are the 4 varnas and the 4 ashrams. and they are natural, and they appear in society. And so when we say prescribed duty, what is your particular ashram? Or what is your particular varna? Are you a brahmachari student who's supposed to be practicing celibacy and watching or maintaining your development of spiritual knowledge? Are you a grihasta who's married and developing? Are you a mercantilist who is supposed to be performing your karma or your prescribed duties as a person who develops the agriculture or banking or sales or whatever? What is your role? What is your prescribed duty? You follow your prescribed duty, and if you follow prescribed duties in the Vedic literature, this is called karma, or actions which are in cooperation with the Vedas, according to prescribed duties, and therefore you receive what's called a favorable reaction, or good karma. What is that favorable reaction? It's like a bank account. You build up a bank account. In building up that bank account, like if you work in the world, you work very hard, and you make a lot of money, and you keep banking that money. And then one day, you take your wife and you go to Hawaii and you have a vacation. So when you're in the vacation, you're not working. You're just enjoying yourself. They're bringing you food, they're bringing you liquor, you're having pleasure with your wife, you're laying around, you get massages, you don't do any work. When does that end?
When the money runs out.
When the money runs out, correct. So, pious activities are like that. Pious activities are activities that are a bank account by which you will eventually either go to a much higher state of life in this world or to heaven. In a higher state of life in this world, you may be born into a very wealthy, powerful, influential family in which you have no difficulties in life and you can enjoy. Or you may go to heaven. The difference between being here in this world and being in heaven is that when you're in heaven, you're just spending your karmic activity. You're spending your karma. There's no sin in heaven. There's no good or bad. You just spend your pious activity. You can enjoy as you like. You can take somaras, which is an intoxicant. You can have more men or more women in your life than you can imagine. You can enjoy with anybody. You can eat what you like. You can do all these things. Just enjoy pleasure, like you're on vacation. When that karma runs out, when those pious activities have been burned up by your enjoying pleasure in the heavenly planets and Svarga, then you will have to come back down to the material world. And you will have to live here. And again, this is karmastan. This is where you follow prescribed duties, you get pious activities. You perform vikarma, activities which are against the prescription of the Vedas, you get sinful reactions, you get harmful reactions, which cause you to either take a lower birth within this earth plane or to go to lower planes of existence to suffer. Or the third option is to do akarma. And Prabhupada describes akarma here. He says, actions that free one from the cycle of birth and death are called akarma. Okay? Gurudev takes a different angle of vision. He says, akarma means not to perform one's prescribed action, in the sense that the actions that you're performing are based on devotion in bhakti. And therefore, those actions, okay, may or may not necessarily be your prescribed duties. But as long as they're acts of devotion, or even if you are performing your prescribed duties with the consciousness of offering them as acts of devotion, they become akarma. Therefore, inaction, inaction. And this is the point of this verse. This is what Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev are trying to instruct us. And therefore, it says in verse 18, one who sees inaction in action. This is what devotional service is. Two people are working. One person is going to work. He's getting money. He's only enjoying the fruits of that money for his personal pleasure. This is karma and vikarma. And the other person, depending on how he executes his duties in life. But the other person, like in the beginning when Srila Prabhupada first came to America, the disciples were working at jobs. And they were taking all their money and giving it to Prabhupada in order to maintain the mission. This is called akarma, inaction within action. For those who can see action, inaction in action, and action in inaction, for those who falsely take sannyas and who are not acting within the principles of devotional service, who are not using their sannyas dharma for promoting spiritual welfare of all living beings, who are not cultivating things properly, then those persons, they are actually getting karma for their action. So there is action within inaction. They're not doing any work, but they're getting karma. And those who are working but offering the fruit with the proper consciousness, they're doing action, but it's inaction within action. This is what these verses are trying to instruct us. Now, the work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Now, this next verse, text 24, is a very key and important verse. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagnau brahmana hutam brahmaiva tenagantavyam brahmakarma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So now, Srila Prabhupada is going to give an explanation in this purport about how we can understand this. And this is very important because people misunderstand. Srila Prabhupada has made a lot of statements about how when something is engaged in Krishna consciousness, it becomes spiritualized. And so, therefore, they misuse and misunderstand this point in terms of understanding transcendental knowledge. So I'm going to read what Prabhupada is saying here in the purport, and then I'm going to explain it in a little more detail for you so that you actually get the proper perspective on it. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here in this verse. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is being described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. You're acting within the material atmosphere, and yet you have to transcend that environment. How is that possible? The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is called Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds or yogurt. So we have seen, I remember leaving India, and in India I didn't get very good milk sweets. You know, the milk was not very rich and very good quality. I was living in a very rough, simple place. We were eating very simple foods. So when I came to the West, they brought me the plate of milk sweets from the Mangalarti Maha, and they gave it to me and let me eat as many sweets as I wanted. So I was eating all these sweets, and I got loose motion. So the way to resolve the loose motion from eating all those thick, concentrated milk sweets was to eat yogurt. And once I ate the yogurt, that resolved the problem, and I had normal bowel movements. So Prabhupada is pointing out that the solution to the problem is not to stop acting, but to act in the right consciousness. So similarly, it's not the solution to the condition that you have from eating excessive milk sweets is not to avoid them, but to take the proper milk sweet, or the proper milk product, which will resolve the issue. The materially absorbed, conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu, or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. Brahman means spiritual. And Srila Narayana Maharaj, in his commentary on the Gita, says, we should understand that the word Brahma, or Brahman, means the Brahma Jyoti, or the effulgence of Krishna. Some people, they argue that, no, Brahma and Brahma Jyoti, or Brahman and Brahma Jyoti, they're different. No, they're not different. They're interchangeable. Whether the word is Brahma, or Brahman, or Brahma Jyoti, it all means the effulgence of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada talks about it in the Ishopanishads. He calls it the personal effulgence of Krishna is Brahman, or Brahma Jyoti. And in another place he says the Brahma Jyoti, which emanates from Goloka Vrindavan, which is where Krishna resides, meaning that it's the effulgence coming, personal effulgence coming from Krishna's body, which is also emanating from Goloka Vrindavan. So, Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahmajyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahmajyoti. So we should understand this very clearly. Everything is resting on the Brahmajyoti, and the Brahmajyoti is resting on Krishna. Later in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will quote a verse saying, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the foundation of Brahman. Brahman is coming from me. Okay. So, his effulgence goes everywhere. And everything rests on that effulgence. All of the spiritual and material worlds, all the Vaikuntha planets, Goloka, Mathura, Dwarka, all the different spiritual planetary systems, and the material universes, all the spiritual universes are in the Brahman, okay? The Brahman is surrounding them. And then Radhika, expansion, Ramadevi, Lakshmi, casts a shadow on a portion of the Brahman effulgence. That becomes the material world. So the material world is the shadow on the Brahman. And then in between the material world and the spiritual world is the Karnadak ocean. Okay? which is also known as the Viraja River, okay? And this is also resting on the Brahman. So everything is within the Brahman. Prabhupada is saying right here, Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahmajyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahmajyoti. Everything. Spiritual world, the material world, the Tatastha Shakti, it's all situated in the Brahmajyoti. But when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. So this is the shadow coming from Ramadevi, which is resting on the Brahman, within the Brahmajyoti effulgence. This shadow is understood to be material illusion because the Brahman is covered. It's covered by the shadow. So this is material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. The material veil can be removed by Krishna consciousness. The process of Krishna consciousness removes the material veil and spiritualizes everything. Okay? Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. So now, let's look at this statement. He says, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness. The offering meaning the fruits, vegetables, grains, which we cook and prepare and offer and sacrifice on the altar to the Lord. So, the offering, okay? The process, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the deity. Materially speaking, we're looking at brass, we're looking at marble. But spiritually speaking, we understand that the form of the Lord is non-different from the Lord. Therefore, it is spiritualized. Srila Prabhupada used to say, the temple is spiritualized. It is Brahman. Okay? So it's also, Prabhupada is saying here, it's also who it's being offered to, Brahman. Spiritual. The process of consumption. The process of making the offering to the deity, the recitation of the mantras, the conscious act of saying, this is the fruit of our work, we're offering it to Krishna. Either when we're cooking or when we're making the offering, all of it is a meditation on satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And therefore, this process of consumption is spiritual. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it talks about how Krishna glances over the prasadam and it disappears by his glance. And then by his glance it's replaced. That means it's been consumed by Krishna. And it is therefore spiritualized. It is purified of karma and vikarma, pious activities and impious activities, good karma and bad karma. It is purified of everything. It becomes akarma, that which does not give you any reaction, but gives you transcendental spiritual knowledge. Okay? The contributor, when the person acts in that consciousness, he also becomes spiritualized. And the result is that you take what is bhoga and you make it into prasadam, something spiritual. All combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. Okay. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetail for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. The illusory consciousness is believing, I am this body, these things are mine, these are material things which are temporary, it's matter. I am this body, these things are mine, this is material consciousness, this is Maya. And when we take up the process of Krishna consciousness, we transform the entire thing. I am not this body, I am the soul, and these things are spiritualized because they're being engaged in the service of Krishna. Now, this argument that is put forward sometimes, in one particular example, is, well, Prabhupada said it's all spiritualized, therefore the tape recorder is Brahman. Therefore, since the tape recorder is spiritualized, therefore the sound vibration coming from the tape recorder is transcendental sound vibration. So this is one of the arguments that is presented. So then we have to go back to the definition of the absolute truth, which is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vedanti tat tattva vidam tattvam yajnanam advayam. I have discussed this already, I think, in a previous video. Brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti shabdate. There is one non-dual substance, one absolute truth. The knowers of Vedanta know that the truth is that there is one non-dual substance, Advaigyan Paratattva. However, that non-dual substance manifests itself in three stages: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Is the table Brahman when it's engaged in Krishna service? Yes. Is the temple Brahman when it's engaged in? Yes. Is the prasadam spiritualized? Yes. All of it is spiritualized. All of it. However, Brahman doesn't carry the moods of the inhabitants of Braj. Are we getting transcendental knowledge when we read the books or listen to the tapes? Yes. That transcendental knowledge will help us do two things. One, if you read Srila Prabhupada's books carefully, you see again and again and again and again and again that he's saying that simply by reading books one cannot understand the process of bhakti. One has to get the association of the sadhu and hear the transcendental sound vibration. So again and again and again, he will emphasize that in the books. This will guide us to get that association. And also, we will understand how things work in the spiritual world. What is karma? What is vikarma? What is akarma? What is the spiritual world? What is the material world? What is the difference? All of this knowledge, all of this information will become clearer. So both things have to be there. The best example I can give you of this is when I was going to visit Srila Prabhupada in his room one day, and he told me, you sit down and listen. So I was sitting down, and he was speaking for about a half an hour to some Indian gentlemen. And then after speaking to them, he asked me why I wasn't coming more often, why I wasn't coming on a daily basis to hear him speaking. And then he asked me to quote some verses from the Gita, which I couldn't quote at that time. I was a young brahmachari. I was spending more time collecting funds. And then Srila Prabhupada said, that means you're not reading my books. Every day you have to read my books. Every day you have to read my books. So he gave me, and then he told me why. He said, even I read my books, Prabhupada said. I read my own books. And the reason I read my own books is because I didn't write these books. And then he started saying how every day when I sit down to write these books, Krishna personally comes. And I could feel the presence of Krishna in the room. I couldn't see Krishna, but I could feel his presence because Prabhupada was actually communicating. He was channeling Krishna at that very moment. Krishna comes and he speaks every word, and I take dictation from Krishna. So therefore, when I read the books, even I learn something. Yes, we learn something. We learn all kinds of transcendental knowledge about the difference between matter and spirit and the controller of both. All types of things about the glories of Krishna's unlimited opulences. We learn so many things. But Prabhupada said two things were there. I want you to come and hear me every day, and I want you to read every day. Hear and read. He didn't restrict it to one or the other. And there was a reason. Because something special happens with the hearing. And Srila Prabhupada talks about it in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when he talks about that verse, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido. That Satam means pure devotee. Satam Prasanga, we should take positive association with the pure devotee. Why? Because he has virya, potency, transcendental spiritual potency. Bhavanti Rit Karna. Rit means heart and Karna means ear. Rasayana Kata. This transcendental spiritual glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, this Hari Kata, will rasayana, it will rejuvenate you. It'll help dissolve your subtle body, and it'll help remove your attachment to the physical body, and it will manifest your eternal spiritual form. Rasayana Kata. Rejuvenation. So, this verse, when he writes his commentary on this verse, he explains that if one does not associate with the pure devotee simply by theoretical knowledge or study, he will only make negligible advancement, negligible progress. Because reading and hearing, of the two, hearing is more important. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first chapter, 6th verse, hearing and explaining the Vedic literatures is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the Vedic literatures only by hearing and explaining. That is in a purport to verse number 6, 116. And assimilation is a very key word. It refers to this concept of rasayana, or rejuvenation, or transformation. Assimilation means, in terms of scientific knowledge about the process of digestion, assimilation means to transform food into living tissue. So you're transforming spiritual food into living spiritual form. Rasayana Kata. It's a transformation that takes place. That's why you have to hear. It's only by hearing. And Srila Prabhupada explains that again in 325.25, Satam Prasangam, in the purport. The non-devotees cannot understand the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by reading Srimad Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature. They will think of them as fantasy or folklore. Why? Why will they think of them like that? And then Prabhupada explains it right there in the next line of that sentence. They will think of them as fantasy or folklore because they have not heard it explained in the proper mood. And this is what Srila Narayan Maharaj explained to me when he was talking about the difference between reading and hearing. He said, when you read, you'll get transcendental knowledge. When you hear the tapes or watch the videos, you'll get transcendental knowledge. But the moods of the inhabitants of Braj will only be conveyed to your heart by hearing the transcendental sound vibration directly from the lips of the sadhu. This is the emphasis that's given. If you look in that Gaudiya Gita Gucci, in the back of that book right there, you'll see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's ultimate advice, okay? It's called The Ultimate Advice. At the end of the book, after all the songs. Okay. So in that Ultimate Advice, number 18, do you see it there? Is it there? Maybe it's in the hardbound version, the bigger book. I wanted to quote it directly. Do you have the yellow covered songbook?
Yeah, at your place.
Oh, at my place, okay. You don't have it here? The yellow or the blue or any one of those? Okay. It should be in here. Upadeshavali, the ultimate advice, it's called. The Upadeshavali of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The 18th advice. Krishna's darshan can only be attained through the medium of the ear, as one hears Hari Katha from pure devotees. There is no other way. It's very direct, unambiguous, very clear. Very clear. It's about hearing. And Prabhupada makes that point again and again and again throughout the Vedic literature. So everything, trying to understand this concept of everything being in the Brahman, okay? Everything being spiritualized. Try to understand the difference. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Try and understand that getting the moods of the inhabitants of Braj can only come through hearing the transcendental sound vibration from the lips of the devotees. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on that verse, 325-25, emphasizes that point. He says, if you hear from a devotee who is of ordinary stature, then you'll be inspired to do bhajana kriya. He said, but if you hear the excellent pastimes of the Supreme Lord from a sattant, from a pure devotee, then your anarthas will be removed gradually. And then you will get nishta, firm faith. In that verse, satam prasangam mama savirya samvido bhavanti rikarna rasayana kata shradhir ratir bhaktir anukramisyanti. The last line, you'll get shradhir, faith. Which faith? Nishta, firm faith. after your anarthas are removed. He said, and then by continuing to hear the excellent pastimes of the Supreme Lord from pure devotees, one will get ruchi, taste. And then by continuing to hear the pastimes of the Supreme Lord from pure devotees, one will get asakti, attachment. And then by continuing to hear the excellent pastimes of the Lord from the pure devotees, one will get bhav. So at every stage, he's saying that the process of going up the ladder of perfection to bhav and then to prem is by hearing the excellent pastimes of the Lord from the pure devotee. Emphasized throughout his commentary on that verse 325-25. So yes, the book is spiritualized, the videos are spiritualized, the tapes are spiritualized, they're all spiritualized, they're all giving us transcendental knowledge about the difference between matter and spirit and the controller of both, and they're directing us to the one thing that can give us, implant within us, the moods of the inhabitants of Braj, dissolve our subtle body, and allow our spiritual form to manifest, and that is to hear from the lips of the pure devotee. Srila Saraswati Thakur says, any instruction that is given that contradicts this meaning of the purpose of the Shastras is not to be heard. There's only one purpose, he says, for the Shastra, to direct us to hear from the lips of the pure devotee. Very clear. The emphasis is direct. So, another point I wanted to make about everything being in the Brahman is something else that Prabhupada talks about here. This is mantra 16 of the Ishopanishads. The all-pervading feature of the Lord, which exists in all circumstances of waking and sleeping, as well as in potential states, and from which the Jiva Shakti, the living force, is generated as both conditioned and liberated souls, is known as the Brahman. And he directly says that the jivas are in the Brahman. And then he restates that same point in mantra 17. As we have learned from the previous mantras, the Brahma Jyoti emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord is full of spiritual sparks that are individual entities, spiritual souls, with the full sense of existence. So here he's clearly stating it. And what does he mean by the full sense of existence? Is that everything is there in seed form. Our spiritual form, our spiritual rasa, it's all there. Prabhupada, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Narayan Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Saraswati Thakur all talk about this, that the rasa is inherent in the soul, in seed form. And it manifests later on when it is watered with the sweet Hari Katha that comes from the lips of the pure devotees. So, therefore, understanding all of these things, we come to verse 34, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyami te jnanam nanivas tattvadarshana. Therefore, try to learn the truths by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively, render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So, Krishna begins this chapter talking about the performance, the understanding of the parampara, the line, the lineage of transcendental knowledge that is handed down through multiple generations of devotees. And in those ancient times, it was all sound vibration. Okay. Now, he's recommending to Arjuna that one will have to approach the spiritual master, and by approaching him, one has to inquire submissively. It has to be the proper mood of inquiry, not challenging the guru, but inquiring submissively. And then rendering service. The rendering of service is absolutely essential. You take the order of the guru and you make it your heart and soul, and you render service to the guru based on his instructions. And by doing so, then the information which he has spoken to you and invested in you, in your heart, will gradually be revealed. I used to do this little test with some of my god brothers and god sisters who were not convinced about the idea of hearing from the pure devotee and what it meant to hear from the pure devotee. So I'd say, well, look, let's do a little test. Read a chapter of the Gita or read a chapter of the Bhagavatam, and then go to the Badger Festival and hear Srila Narayana Maharaj speak. And then after hearing him speak for a week, when you go back, read that same chapter and tell me what happens. And they would all write me, oh my, Maharaj, it was such a big difference. It was like I was reading the chapter for the first time. Everything changed. Everything started popping out at me. Because the pure devotee invests something in you. So it's sitting there. And by submissively hearing, it will manifest. And rendering service, it will manifest more deeply. Realization comes from service. That service will give you deeper insights into the different understandings of the transcendental knowledge of the Gita. Very powerful insights. And it will ultimately help you to become free from all karma and material attachments in this world. There's another verse in here after the Brahmarpanam verse, which is very, very powerful, and Gurudev gives a really important commentary on that verse, which I would like to enter into the record here. Rendering service is it's a kind of contract that you make with the pure devotee, with the guru. You have to identify who is a real guru. This is important. And that information is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam about how you can identify a real guru. Tasmad guru prapadyante jigneshu shreya uttamam. Now, this is being spoken by one of the Navyogendras to Maharaj Nemi. And Maharaj Nemi heard from the Navyogendra. The Navyogendras are the 9 sons of Rishabdev after Bharat. Bharat is the eldest son, and he becomes the king of the world. And then the next 9 sons become rishis, yogendras. And they deliver discourses to Maharaj Nemi about spiritual life. So one of the Yogendras, one of the 9 Yogendras, is explaining about Maya to Maharaj Nemi, what Maya is. And so after describing everything about Maya, then that verse, Tasma, therefore understanding now what is Maya, what it means to be under illusion, how you cannot make your way out of Maya by yourself, that you don't have the power to transcend Maya by your own strength. Therefore, understanding this great power of Maya, Tasmad, therefore, Tasmad Guru Papadyante, surrender unto one who is Guru, who has transcended Maya. Jigneshu Shreya Uttamam, and inquire from that person for your Uttama, your ultimate benefit. Saying essentially the same thing that's being spoken here in this verse. But then it describes the nature of that person, why he's Guru. Shabde pare chanishnatam. He has heard Shabde. He has heard the transcendental sound vibration from the lips of the sadhus. Pare. He has realized what he has heard. He has realized knowledge of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shabde pare chanishnatam. So you want to associate with that person because Brahmanya Upashamshayam, he is situated on the Brahman platform, on the spiritual platform, and he is undisturbed by Maya. He is not disturbed. His senses are not assaulted by the modes of material nature and by the nature of Maya. He is above that. He is Guru. Guru means heavy. Within the ocean of the material nature, which is tossing everyone around, this ocean of Maya, Guru is fixed. He is heavy. He is situated in one spot, undisturbed by the movement of that ocean, beyond it, transcendent to it, fixed. Guru, heavy. So, very important to understand this point. Guru. How Guru is transcendent to material nature. Therefore, choosing such a person, you have to inquire, Jigneshu Shreya Uttamam, about your ultimate good, and then out of appreciation and thanks, your response is that you want to render service. This is your payment. Here is my service. And that service mood has to be there always. I have personal experience, and many other devotees I know have told me that when they have done some very nice service for their guru, diksha or shiksha, they have received an internal happiness which cannot be measured. And that spiritual happiness, that taste of spiritual happiness, comes as a gift from the sadhu. Yes, the happiness you're looking for is here. Just keep inquiring, just keep serving, just keep hearing, and everything will come. You'll be able to taste that happiness ad infinitum, unlimitedly. And after this verse of Tadvidi Pranipratena Pariprashnena Sevaya, after acquiring such gyan, you will never again be deluded. By that knowledge, you will see all living beings as jivatmas, and you will see them in me, Paramatma. Arjuna, even if you are the most sinful of sinners, you will be able to completely cross over the ocean of all sins by taking shelter of this boat of transcendental knowledge. O Arjuna, just as the blazing fire burns firewood to ashes, in the same way the fire of transcendental knowledge burns all karmic reactions to ashes. So when transcendental gyan manifests in a pure mind, it burns up all karma, reactions, except for parabdha karma, meaning previous sinful activities performed in the previous life, the seeds of future sinful activities. And here, in Gurudev's commentary, he explains, Gyan destroys the reactions of all sorts of karma, such as nitya karma, naimittika karma, kamya, vikarma, aparabdha karma, and sanchita, but not parabdha karma. This has been verified in the Vedanta Darshan, in the Brahma Sutra. Tad adigama uttara purva gayor ashtesha vinasau tad vyapadeshat. Even a jnani has to face the results of his parabdha karma. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, however, a person who has taken shelter of the holy name, be it even namabhas, a semblance of pure chanting, not only destroys the results of all of his karma, such as sanchita, aparabdha, and kuta, but also the fruits of parabdha karma, which means the seeds of future sinful desires. So all of this will be removed. So this is why one associates with a pure devotee and takes up the process of spiritual life and gets transcendental knowledge from him, because it removes all pious and impious reactions and gives one only transcendental spiritual fruits, which are imprinted on his spiritual consciousness that emanates from his soul, as opposed to material impressions on his subtle material body. Those who are ignorant, faithless, and of a doubting nature are ruined. For the doubting person, there is happiness neither in this world or the next. O Dhananjaya, conqueror of riches, a person who has renounced karma through the process of Nishkam Karma Yoga, who has dispelled all of his doubts by Gyan, and who has realized his Atma Swarup, his spiritual form, is not bound by karma. Therefore, O Bharata, slash the sword of Gyan, slash with the sword of Gyan this doubt in your heart, which is born of ignorance. Take shelter of Nishkam Karma Yoga and prepare for battle. Perform inaction within action. And this next chapter will be Karma Sannyas Yoga, and it will talk about, the 5th chapter will talk about this, and this is where Arjuna asks the next question in the ongoing narrative of the 16 questions, in which he's trying to understand what Krishna is explaining to him. He's asking questions also on our behalf, and the 5th question is the first verse of the 5th chapter, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. O Krishna, after first praising karma sannyas, the renunciation of action, you are again describing nishkam karma yoga, action offered to Bhagavan without attachment to its fruit. Therefore, please tell me definitely which of these two is auspicious for me. So, Upadekshyami te jnanam, gnani vas tattvadarshana. He lays the question before him, tadvadi panipratena, pariprashnena sevaya, jignashu shreya uttamam. He lays the question before his spiritual teacher. He asks for clarification, for clearance of understanding, and now Krishna will explain and answer that question in the fifth chapter. Oh, Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of these two is more beneficial? This is the question that drives the narrative within the first third of the Bhagavad Gita, and we will discuss that in the next class. Thank you very much. Okay?
How can we distinguish between circumstantial duties and prescribed duties?
That's described in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in verse number 30. Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mama nanyabak sadureva samantavya. So in that verse, he says that there are two tracks. One is our conditional activities, and one is our constitutional activities. So he says to live within the world, you have to perform certain conditional activities. You have to work, you have to raise a family, all of these things. These are called your conditional activities. And you have to perform them. And then you have constitutional activities, your bhajan, your chanting, your reading, your devotional practices. He said, as far as possible, you should try and let these two tracks run parallel so that they allow you to move smoothly through the world. You try not to contaminate your constitutional activities with the inappropriate practice of your conditional activities. So in this way, you have responsibilities to perform in either your varna or your ashram. If you are a Brahmin and your responsibility is to educate others, then you perform that duty in your grihastha ashram, and you maintain your wife and children according to the practice of your Brahminical culture, etc. This is following, practicing your prescribed duties and your conditional duties, but you offer the fruit of your work, nishkam karma yoga, to Krishna. And gradually, by doing this, Srila Narayana Maharaj points out, your taste for Kevala Bhakti, bhakti which is performed without mixture of karma or jnana, will manifest. But if, in the course of performing those conditional activities, you fall prey to the allurements of the material world and the pleasures of the material world, you become too greedy for wealth, power, prestige, etc., etc., the result of that will be that you will fail in the execution of your devotional activities, and that will contaminate the process, and you won't be able to function properly. Does that clarify your question? Okay. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare